Hey everyone, CTNtechnologynews here, and today I'm doing a rumor video on the upcoming Apple iPod Touch 6th generation, and more specifically when it's going to release. So the last version of the iPod Touch, the 5th generation, released in September of 2012 alongside the iPhone 5. It's been about a year and a half to 2 years since it launched, so it is getting pretty old, and considering Apple did upgrade the iPhone with the iPhone 5S, but they haven't upgraded the iPod Touch, I think it's about time that Apple does upgrade the iPod Touch to the 6th generation model. But a new report has just suggested that Apple is planning to skip the 2014 release date just like they skipped 2013 because they're working on the iWatch instead. Basically, the iWatch is Apple's entry into the wearable market, which is still not confirmed and may not even exist, but if it does launch, it'll probably launch in September or October, about the time when the new iPods would normally be unveiled. Now, in some ways it does make sense that Apple would want to push the iPod Touch 6th generation and any new iPod models into 2015 to make it easier for their customers to spend money on an iWatch, but this reasoning doesn't address a certain problem. People who buy the iPod Touch are looking for a device without a contract that still has all the functionality basically of a smartphone. They want a device that can play apps, they can access the internet, they can basically be everything this smartphone is without the contract. That was what Apple got with the original iPod Touch, but I think that's what they're losing sight of now as we're getting into like 2014 and 2015. The user base who actually likes the iPod Touch, who likes the the whole phone without a contract mindset, they're not going to want to buy an iWatch because that's not the sort of products they're looking for. They're looking for a device that has the functionality of a smartphone without the contract, and I know I keep saying that, but I think that's an important thing to stress. If Apple does push the iPod Touch 6th generation release date into 2015, I bet we'll be waiting a whole another year to see the new iPod Touch, because I don't think Apple will unveil their new iPod models before fall of the year. So, if it doesn't release in September or October of 2014, I think we'll be waiting until September or October of 2015. I don't know, this just seems like a bit of a bad planning decision on Apple's part. I think that they've just underestimated, the people who do still buy the iPod Touch, and, I will admit, iPod Touch sales have been falling slowly but steadily, and, the number of people who will buy the iPod Touch is a lot lower than, maybe it was in 2010. But that doesn't mean that Apple should just abandon its customers altogether. There are still a number of people who want a new iPod Touch, who are actually looking forward to the next model of the music player, and want to see it coming relatively soon as opposed to later. If Apple does wait until 2015 to release a new iPod Touch, that'll be 3 years from when the iPod Touch 5th generation launched. And for people who still own the iPod Touch 4th generation, I mean, that just seems like forever, considering that the iPod Touch 4th generation is now almost extinct. It doesn't have the most recent version of Apple software, it runs extremely slowly, and it's just not a very good device altogether. There are a lot of people who are holding on to their iPod Touch 4th generation right now because they're waiting for the iPod Touch 6th generation. I think that Apple could see a boom when they next release their iPod Touch if they release it at the right time. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below though. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye!